News at 6 starts now. Now at 6, the case that's captivated the region nearing an end.
22117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Read.
Karen Read, accused of killing her police officer boyfriend.
Read's attorneys making a final push in closing arguments.
The uncontrovertible fact is you have been lied to in this courtroom.
Saying the whole thing was a massive cover-up.
But prosecutors standing firm, saying she's a killer.
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Those are the words of the defendant.
They believe she left Officer O'Keefe to die in the snow.
We've had months of bombshell testimony and dozens of witnesses. Now it's up to the jury. We have Team 7 coverage of the Karen Read murder trial.
And that does lead our newscast at 6. The fate of Karen Read is now in the hands of the jury. Deliberations have wrapped up for today. They'll pick back up again tomorrow.
Read is accused of hitting her Boston police officer boyfriend John O'Keefe with her SUV and leaving him to die in the snow. We have Team 7 coverage for you this evening, from a closer look at how prosecutors and defense attorneys wrapped up their cases and closing arguments to a look back at some of the biggest moments from this months-long trial. Let's begin with 7's Jonathan Hall, live outside court in Dedham, with more from the prosecution. John?
Adam, it's been a long haul, and we have been here with you every step of the way. The spring had sprung just barely when we started in late April. Now here we are in the dog days of summer, and finally the jury has this case. They deliberated this afternoon for 2.5 hours. 6 men, 6 women, and the lawyers got their closing arguments in. The prosecutor began his argument forcefully, recalling statements several people said Karen Read made as first responders were trying to save her boyfriend's life during a snowstorm in Canton.
I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. Those are the words of the defendant. 4 times. You heard testimony from 4 different witnesses who overheard and observed those statements from the defendant on January 29th, 2022.
Adam Lally asked jurors to use their common sense as they consider Read's fate, and he displayed a timeline of events and played them some of Read's angry voicemail messages left on O'Keefe's phone as he lay dying in the snow.
John, I hate you!
The jury heard there's plenty of evidence the defendant intentionally backed her SUV into John O'Keefe, then left him to die at the home of another Boston police officer named Brian Albert. As they gazed across the courtroom, the jury could see these key prosecution witnesses right there sitting with O'Keefe's family. Left to right, they are Kerry Roberts, Brian Albert, his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, and his nephew, Colin Albert. The defense theory is that the Alberts, along with a federal agent who was at a party at Brian Albert's home named Brian Higgins, could have killed O'Keefe in a drunken fight. Lally scoffed at the theory.
Criminal mastermind genius that Brian Albert is, 28 years on the Boston Police Department, he's then going to just leave Mr. O'Keefe's body on his front lawn? Really?
Lally acknowledged State Police Homicide Detective Michael Proctor wrote some terrible things about Read in his text messages, but he said that doesn't mean Proctor's investigation was compromised.
What do you not see in those text messages? You don't see any discussion or any illusion of any conspiracy, of any framing of the defendant, of any planting of any evidence. No evidence whatsoever. Why? Because it didn't happen.
Judge Beverly Cannoni gave each side 60 minutes to make their cases to the jury. Despite 2 warnings that Lally was running low on time, she had to cut the prosecutor's pitch off mid-sentence.
Mr. Lally, I have to stop you. You've gone over.
Lally asked for one more sentence and was allowed to say there's enough evidence of guilt to convict Read of the 3 charges she faces.
And I would ask that you find yourself. Thank you.
Lally, of course, did finally get to finish up there. Lally talked about other things. DNA evidence on the bumper, cell phone data, and also technology on the Lexus, which showed a real quick acceleration in reverse at about the mileage where that car would have been at that time on January 29th. We're live in Dedham. I'm Jonathan Hall, 7 News.
Well, Read's lawyers arguing once again today evidence in this case just does not add up, saying that she's being framed and the whole thing is a cover-up. 7's Rob Way live in Dedham with more from the defense team. Rob?
Adam, both Karen Reed and her attorney tell me they felt good about their closing argument. They had 1 hour to make their case to the jury. How do you think the closing arguments went?
I thought mine went really well. What'd you think?
Karen Reed's defense team optimistic as a jury now decides her fate. She and her lawyers left court after making their final pitch.
You have been lied to in this courtroom. And your job is to make sure you don't ever look the other way. Your singular duty is to stare down the evidence and do it unflinchingly and do it unwaveringly.
Attorney Alan Jackson and Reed's team have claimed from the start she was framed in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, back in 2022. They've argued he was dragged outside after he was beaten up in the basement and attacked by a dog during a party at another officer's Canton home.
How long does it take to have a crossword? How long does it take to have a fight? How long would it take for Brian Higgins to say to John, you know, your girl's been texting me. A push, a punch, a fall, pull Chloe off his arm, and now it's done. What is that? 5 seconds? 10? Doesn't take long at all. And then the panic sets in. It wasn't intended to go that far, but what's done is done.
Jackson also touching on evidence he says doesn't add up, like a video of Reed's car at Canton Police headquarters after O'Keefe died. When shown, the prosecution inferred the video showed the passenger side, but the defense revealed the video was actually inverted, showing the driver's side.
They'll show you a video and tell you left is right and right is left. They'll magically turn 3 pieces of plastic into 5 right before your eyes. And even when they're caught with their own lies, they won't blink, they don't sweat. They'll just look you in the eye and demand, pay no attention. You folks look the other way. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a cover-up in this case, plain and simple.
He then gave his closing message to the jury.
Karen Reed is innocent. Do justice and find her not guilty.
Karen, how did you feel about closing argument?
Great.
Reed's dad also happy with his daughter's team. How do you think the closing arguments went today?
Thank you.
I thought Jackson was fantastic.
Yes.
The defense team, like the jurors, have gone home for the night. Of course, the jurors will be back here tomorrow to continue their deliberations. Live in Dedham, Rob Way, 7 News.
We've seen some intense moments play out in that courtroom during the last 2 months of the trial. There were dozens of witnesses, emotional testimony, and countless pieces of evidence. 7's Dan Housley is live outside the courthouse now to revisit some of those biggest moments. Dan.
Well, Kimmy, you never know what's exactly going to catch the jury's attention, what's going to sway their verdict one way or another. But we've come up with a list of things that caught our attention. Karen Reed's defense team spent much of their time putting law enforcement on trial, resulting in some eye-opening moments.
Unprofessional and regrettable comments are something I'm not proud of, and I shouldn't have wrote in a private or any type of setting.
The case's lead investigator, State Police Trooper Michael Proctor, admitted to sending wildly inappropriate texts to friends about Reed. Many read in court, but too graphic to air.
My response was 0 chance she skated.
And then what did you write?
She's
0 chance she skates. She's right?
Correct.
Shame on you, sir.
And he wasn't the only man with a badge admitting to regrettable texts.
I'm proud of these text messages. It is what it is. I'll take responsibility for them.
Brian Higgins is an ATF special agent who was at the Canton home where John O'Keefe died in 2022. Higgins admitted he had exchanged flirty texts with Reed in the days before O'Keefe turned up dead.
Sexually attracted to her?
I was physically attracted to her, yes.
Sexually attracted to her was my question.
Well, I think in the text I said, you're hot.
Reed never took the stand in her own defense, but we did hear her voice in dramatic fashion.
Nobody knows what the wrong her.
Prosecutors played a series of angry messages she left on O'Keefe's phone the night he died. 53 calls and 8 messages in all. Reed's one-time friend, Jennifer McCabe, logged more time on the witness stand than anyone else. McCabe was with Reed when O'Keefe's body was found. Over several days of testimony, McCabe was grilled by Reed's lawyers about when she made a Google search asking how long to die in the cold, and about call logs the defense argued she suspiciously deleted.
You sanitized your phone because you didn't want the police to know who you had been calling or the fact that you had been calling John O'Keefe's phone incessantly, correct?
Incorrect. I willingly turned over my phone.
After you deleted your phone call logs, correct?
Absolutely not.
One of the defense team's biggest breaks in the case came when prosecutors had to admit they had misrepresented a key piece of evidence. It was video of Reed's car appearing to show damage to the passenger side taillight when prosecutors said Reed hit O'Keefe in a snowstorm. Investigators were forced to admit the video had been flipped, prompting Reed to mouth in court, "It's on the wrong side." The defense says the admission bolsters their theory that it was actually Trooper Proctor who broke Reed's taillight in an effort to frame her. Now, of course, the most dramatic moment is likely yet to come when the jury announces a verdict, if they can agree on one. We're live in Dedham. Dan Housley, 7 News.
Okay, so with closing arguments in the book, we spoke with our legal expert for some insight on what we saw and heard in the courtroom today and even before so. Let's go to Victoria Price, live in Dedham with that part of our Team 7 coverage. Victoria?
Well, Adam, beyond what was just said today in closing arguments, this has been a high-profile trial with a lot of attention and headline-grabbing moments. But our legal expert, he cautions those who have been following along at home that the trial that you watch on the news is never quite the exact same case that the jury is watching play out in the courtroom.
I think both sides did a great job in the closings, but I think it's a close case. I think it's going to come down to the science.
7 News legal analyst Tom Hoops weighing in on the conclusion of the Karen Reed trial. With 70-plus witnesses and a lot of science for the jury to sift through, he expects deliberations to likely go for several days.
6-7 days for a deliberation first day case, no, but 3 days, sure.
Hoops also says it's not uncommon that the Commonwealth's case took up most of the time in this high-profile trial. Meanwhile, the defense only needed a couple of days and a handful of witnesses.
The defense got in everything it wanted, by and large, through its cross-examination.
There was also a stark contrast in style, he says. The prosecution, slow and methodical. The defense, bold and theatrical.
To me, the real question is whatever you say and however you say it, are you believable to the jury?
Bottom line, Hoops believes this case was overcharged, meaning the several lesser-included offenses like vehicular manslaughter will be critical.
But the stepladder there, it's a long way down to not guilty.
Hoops adds that it's important to really not read into just how long these deliberations may take, if they're short or if they're longer, and if that's going to benefit the prosecution or the defense. He says ultimately juries are just far too unpredictable for that to really ever be a strong barometer. We're live in Dedham tonight. Victoria Price, 7 News.
Each side got 1 hour for their closing argument. If you missed any of it, you can head to our website, WHDH.com, where we have posted each closing argument in its entirety. So jurors are now deciding if Karen Reed is innocent or guilty. They'll be back at court in the morning to resume deliberations. Of course, we will bring you the verdict live when it happens. And we've compiled a quick recap of each day's testimony in the trial that you can watch to see what you would decide. Just scan the QR code that's on the screen to watch. And stay with the news station for continuing coverage of the trial. We'll have the very latest as we await the verdict on air, online, and inside the 7 News app.